Listen to Podnasty on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/AKONUWA.
This Friday, February 26th, live on pay-per-view, ROH will be celebrating its 14th anniversary in Las Vegas. Bell time is 6 p.m. Pacific. You can get your tickets right now or order online at ROHWrestling.com. And I have the pleasure of speaking with one of its biggest stars in history. He just re-signed with the company, and he's here to stay, Mr. Christopher Daniels. How are you, my friend?
I'm thrilled to be a part of it all, man. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for being here. Now, you mentioned you're thrilled to be a part of it, and it's got to be exciting for you guys. 14 years in pro wrestling, that's a huge accomplishment. How do you think ROH has been able to survive and adapt in a changing pro wrestling landscape?
Well, I think one of the things that really was in its favor was the idea that this company early on became a destination for a lot of young talent to be recognized by the pro wrestling community, and especially after it got television, to be seen by a national audience that may not have the opportunity to see those guys. So when you become a destination like that, you've got thousands and thousands of pro wrestlers, young talented pro wrestlers that are hungry for that opportunity, that are knocking on the door trying to come into the company. And when you've got that type of talent to choose from, it's easy to build a roster of talented, are hungry and ready to go, and that fans want to be, that fans want to watch, fans want to follow, and once you've got that type of roster, you can't help but have great wrestling shows across the board.
We just saw Daniel Bryan retire, and part of his legacy is that now WWE is open to signing guys from independent wrestling backgrounds, smaller guys, but Daniel Bryan may not have ever been a big thing in WWE if it wasn't for ROH, where he was very prominent. So how much do you think ROH is responsible for the changing in what we see as main eventers now?
Well, I certainly think that ROH was a little bit ahead of the curve when it came to the changing of the perception of what constitutes a main event star. WWE, you can argue that WWE has always been the land of the giants, and it is still, but at the same time, you talk about men like CM Punk, men like Daniel Bryan, men like Seth Rollins, who all came through Ring of Honor, and conceivably 10 years ago wouldn't have been necessarily in the WWF's range in terms of what they looked at as a top-level guy. And so as the perception changed, as what is considered a main event star became more of an athletic thing rather than a size thing, you had guys like Daniel and Seth and CM Punk. AJ Styles is another example. These guys that are a little bit smaller but still wildly athletic, and those guys sort of started taking over. And once you got them in the ring, you couldn't deny their talent. That's another thing too. Like, for all the time that Daniel Bryan worked as hard as he did to get to the WWE, once he got there, the ball was his to drop or to run with. And every time he got in the ring, he delivered, he connected with the fans, and that was what really got him. I mean, it wasn't, there wasn't preferential treatment. It wasn't like they protected him specifically. They let him go out there and rise or fall on his own merits, and that's what he did.
And that has to be a byproduct of ROH. There's so much talent there, so many guys that you just mentioned who came out of ROH, so you have to be on your game and work hard every single night. Would you agree?
Absolutely, and I think that's the case for every, major federation in professional wrestling. Once you become a destination, you've got all these people vying for so few spots on the roster. You have to up your game just to be good enough to get in the door. And that's true about WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor. I think Ring of Honor specifically can be considered a little more difficult just because you've got so many different styles that come through Ring of Honor in terms of guys who are based in Japan doing more of a cruiserweight style, guys that have come through Mexico. Like, there's such a wide diversity of styles that comes into Ring of Honor that conceivably, it's a little bit more difficult to get to the top of the card there. But at the same time, like I said, once you become a destination, you've got everybody that wants to be a part of the product. And that's what makes it so great, is that everybody's fighting to get a good position and that's when you got to, like you said, bring your A game.
Now, you mentioned the many different styles in Ring of Honor alone. There's also a lot of different styles of wrestling being presented, from Lucha Underground, NXT, New Japan Pro Wrestling. We just heard they signed Michael Elgin. And so now you've re-signed with ROH. What is it about ROH that enticed you to stay when there's really, it seems, more options than ever on the national pro wrestling scene?
Well, honestly, Ring of Honor has always been a home to me. Like, when I needed a place to wrestle, they opened their doors to me. And so I felt like at this point in my career, in addition to what I do in the ring, Ring of Honor gave me an opportunity to sort of help behind the scenes as well. And this is an opportunity for me to not just continue performing at a top level in front of the fans, but for me to help build what can be considered the next crop of great talent that you'll see in a Ring of Honor ring. And if I can do that, that's a small repayment for everything that Ring of Honor has done for me over the course of the 14 years that they've been in business.
Now, you were with Ring of Honor early. I distinctly remember you becoming one of the first talents to disobey the Code of Honor. And this led to the forming of the Prophecy, which I very much appreciated. Whose idea was it to put all that talent together? What was the thinking behind that group?
Well, you'd have to go to Gabe Sapolsky, who has always been, has always had a great mind for wrestling, and I felt like he had a great mind for long-term planning. And so, like, early on, when we first got there to Ring of Honor, he talked to me about the idea of building a group and having me be, the guy that was sort of driving the bus. And he gave me that opportunity, and he always was very supportive for any ideas that I had. But yeah, you have, even today with Evolve, you see Gabe's talent on display.
Now, one other career highlight with you is your tag team with Frankie Kazarian, which has brought you success all over the country, whether it's Bad Influence, The Addiction. And what I always liked about that team is whether it's comedy or whether it's in-ring, no one man really ever outshines the other. There's always so much balance, which is very rare in pro wrestling when it comes to elite tag teams. So what do you think is the key to a balanced tag team?
Well, I think part of it is just the idea of letting go of yourself, of your ego, and understanding that the sum of the whole is greater than the parts. I don't want the Addiction to be Christopher Daniels and a sidekick, and I don't want it to be Frankie Kazarian and a sidekick. I feel like as two parts that are equal, we definitely make the team the focus, and I think that has led to longevity, especially in, I guess, what you would call a crop of great tag teams, especially at Ring of Honor. Frankie and I have been together now almost 4 years, and conceivably that's sort of unheard of on a national scene for a tag team to stick together that long. But Frankie and I feel like we perform best as a unit, and I feel like we still only scratch the surface of what we can do as a team. And right now in Ring of Honor, with as many great tag teams as we have, there's so many opportunities to have great matches with great teams that the Addiction certainly fits in that roster and in that list of great teams.
So is that where your career goals lie? Are there any singles accomplishments that you would like to achieve moving forward in the future? Or is the tag team, would you be content with being in a tag team for the remainder of your career?
I think so. I mean, certainly I would love an opportunity to be world champion. That's the one prize that eluded me in my career. But if I never get that opportunity, if the last thing that I get a chance to do is be a part of the Addiction, I'm happy with that, man. I feel like Frankie and I have built a resume that stands with a lot of great tag teams in the past. And I feel like I said before, I feel like we've only scratched the surface. It's not going to be the last time that we'll be at the top of the mountain, so to speak. And, I look forward to whatever comes my way, whether it is more success with the team or if Frankie and I decide to pursue singles careers. One of the things I've always said is if Frankie Kazarian became world champion tomorrow, the first man that would be there to shake his hand and raise his hand would be me. And I know that Frankie feels the same way if that caveat was to come my way. I know that he'd be my greatest supporter. So, like, we've always supported each other, and no matter what comes our way, we always know that we've got each other's back.
And I think that speaks to the key of your team is no ego, no matter what. So that's very great to hear. You talk about your great resume. There's also a lot of peers that you have around wrestling who have great resumes, who've shown up in WWE and NXT, from AJ Styles to Samoa Joe to Kevin Owens. I'm sure you've been asked about all. I want to know, who do you think is currently having the best run of these peers that you've worked with in ROH in the past, and who do you think has the biggest ceiling?
Well, you can't deny what's going on with AJ right now. The impact that he's made in such a short period of time, the opportunity to work with one of my personal favorite wrestlers, Chris Jericho, and the matches that he's had over the last few weeks. That's been a great run for him. You also have to point at Kevin, as a two-time Intercontinental champion, former NXT champion. He's certainly made an impact pretty quickly. The matches that he had last year with John Cena. Also, too, like, you have to look at someone like Seth Rollins, who for a long time was just on fire with his performances. Like, everything he did was spectacular. The stuff that he did with Brock, the stuff that he did with John, all great stuff, and I can't wait to see him get back in the ring and be healthy again. I was really disappointed when he got hurt. I felt like he was really on a great run, and unfortunately injury caught up to him. But when he comes back, I feel like he's definitely going to have a resurgence, especially in the way the market is right now with so many injuries. The minute he comes back, I think there's going to be great things coming from him as well.
Now, we have seen a lot of injuries in wrestling as of late. We've also seen a lot of concussions in WWE, and a lot of major sporting leagues are taking these issues seriously. Now, you've been wrestling, had a very prolific career for over 2 decades now. Is this something with CTE and concussions that concern you, Chris?
I've been very fortunate. I haven't gotten many concussions. I can't really think of any off the top of my head that I know that I've gotten. So I'm not specifically concerned for myself, but the way that the marketplace has changed in terms of what is important on the pro wrestling landscape. It used to be where the major events were either house shows or live events or pay-per-views, and the television show sort of drove the audiences towards those events. And now in this day and age, everything seems to be catered towards pushing to the TV audience. And especially you look at Raw, every week they're doing 3 hours of television plus 2 hours of SmackDown, and more guys are asked to do higher impact style matches, or at least higher quality matches, more often. And then, you look at it like that, and you realize that sort of the law of averages is catching up with a lot of guys, and that's why I think, like, the injury rate is so high. And, the possibility of getting concussions certainly increases the more often you're asked to go and perform at a higher rate. So, yeah, it concerns me in that respect. I hate to see any of my friends, any of the people that I consider, brothers in this ridiculous thing we do called falling down for a living. I hate to see anybody get hurt or anybody suffer any long-term effects to their health like that. So it concerns me in that respect. Like I said, though, I've been very fortunate, and I consider myself lucky. And at this point in my career, too, I feel like I'm wrestling smart. And so I feel like I'm going to avoid a lot of that stuff. But as a whole, yeah, it bothers me a little bit.
And that's the thing. It's very interesting you bring up that there is so much wrestling, and I'm just blown away by how many great quality matches we get. I mean, we see Kevin Owens and Dolph Ziggler every week just have incredible matches, but I think fans are numb to it now. One thing I liked about the Attitude Era and growing up watching wrestling in the 90s, it was a television show in that there was one storyline that affected everything else, and the wrestling was prominent, but it seemed almost secondary in that we're not going to get these great, huge matches until pay-per-views. Is that something you think WWE maybe needs to go back to, is more storytelling and less frequent, big, huge matches every week?
Well, I think that's sort of lends the question of is 3 hours every Monday too much? And I think some people would argue yes. It's hard to fill 3 hours without having longer matches, and once you have longer matches, that's when you start, increasing the difficulty. Like I don't want to say it's easy, but it's certainly easier to go out and have an 8-minute match than it is to go out and have a 20-minute match. And the more often that you're asked to wrestle in these 20-minute matches, that's when the degree of difficulty goes up. So, but at this point too, you have to look at the finances that come to WWE from the fact that they have a 3-hour show on USA Network, and then another 2-hour show. Now they're on the USA Network for SmackDown as well. So they're getting the benefits of having 2 highly rated television shows. So they have to keep that going, and I don't think they're going to cut back at any point in the future while USA is ponying up good money for their television.
He is Christopher Daniels, a legendary ROH star. You can catch him this Friday, February 26th in Las Vegas, the ROH 14th anniversary show. It is going to be a doozy. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time. It was very interesting, very enlightening interview. Is there anything else you'd like to promote?
No, you can follow me on Twitter at FACDaniels. That's usually where I let everybody know what's going on with my life and career and nonsense that I do. And I just want to say thank you to the fans who've been supporting not just me, but Ring of Honor over the course of these years. Ring of Honor wouldn't have the success that it has if it wasn't for the passionate fan base that we've got. And, we're going to repay your loyalty with a blow-away show on Friday.
And I should expect nothing less than a match between you and Alex Shelley, which will be a blow-away show. Thank you so much, Mr. Daniels.
All right. Thank you, man.
That's definitely my number one goal, to become a Returning World Champion. I would not mind at all along the way helping the younger talent,